Right, just finished off newsletters. Let's jump into the next one. We're going to talk about Discord. I'm going to split this one into three separate parts, just because there's so much to cover with Discord, with the kind of refocus into being a little bit more market fit. Discord's going to play a little bit of a bigger role in, well, not a little bit, like quite a bit bigger role in the short term as actually numbers that we can show. Still doing the platform, still doing all that. Don't want that to cause any confusion. But Discord's going to be the way we can get some of those early metrics. So this is kind of going to be a big part of these changes. I'm going to split into three different parts. So I'm just going to call this Discord. I'm not going to say part one. I'm just going to continue this document the entire time. So two little side notes before we jump into it. Ideally, we want a fair bot on Discord. Just to, for any of those newsletters, whatever, like not sorry, the weekly news, all that shit that we post, that should be going through the bot. It shouldn't be posted as one of those individuals, just because it will look a little bit better. So that's a note there. And an easy way to get more people into Discord and get them interacting and talking is any interviews that we do will happen through Discord. Interviews on Discord. All right. Now that those two little points are out of the way, let's actually talk about this in a more of a structured way. So, as far as what Discord needs, I think there need to be kind of three sides of kind of place interaction, right? So we have two sides right now. We have the education, obviously, which is the kind of actual product facing side, I guess you could call it. We have the internal, which is for our own internal use, which is going to stay. But then, because of the transparency and all that part, we should really have an internal one that's public, right? So internal, that's public. What this means is that it's more of a space where we can have discussions, have these interactions about fair that aren't in the education space. So these are basically really kind of three different sides of the Discord, right? And I've wrote it out as if I was going to put a ton of bullet points around it, and I was not. So let me just put it here, right? So the three sides Discord, three sides of Discord. Because of course, as we grow and we have more people there, there's going to be interactions that focused on education. So what's going on with these stocks and having these discussions, kind of the finance one, I guess. You can call the education kind of finance, right? Internal one, that's for an internal use. There's not much to explain there. And the internal public, that's going to be basically that's going to be like the finance, like from the public side, right? There's the finance side, and then there's the about fair side where you can discuss, oh, what are you guys doing? What are these ideas? Hey, suggestions. Oh, you have this cool podcast, saw this, right? So it's much more focused around fair. It's not going to be super big part compared to the finance education side, but it would just be good to have to be kind of consistent with some of that transparency. And so people who don't give a shit about like some of the updates, like, oh, we're doing this now and doing this now, and they really want to focus on the finance education side, they can, so they don't have to get too spammed with what we're doing. Now, as far as once you have the people on Discord, they're in all these places, their interaction. So who do they, what do they kind of really do? Is there's three kinds of interaction forms, right? There's interactions with us, or like interaction targets, right? So they can interact with us. They can, of course, interact with, like between each other. So I'll call that cross interaction. You put a line. Nah, fuck. That was not straight at all. Let me put a line here. Yeah, straight enough. Cross interaction. So that means I interact between interaction. I am spelling that wrong. Interaction. Which means interacting between each other. And of course, bot interaction, which is, sometimes you have games and stuff on Discord with bots that kind of can do shit. So as far as the main interactions with us, right? There's an avenue which is going to be the kind of educational sessions. Educational sessions, which is basically going to cover that education that we're going to be pilot testing through Discord. Or not pilot testing. We've already done the pilot test. So let's say beta testing through Discord before we have it kind of ran through the platform, which is actually also going to be in the beta test, but whatever. Yeah, you all know what I mean. Then of course AMA, like ask us about all kinds of stuff. There's going to be the podcasts, which are going to happen. Some of the ones that happen live will be on the stages, so people can join. They can even go ask questions, and obviously, we're all going to kind of try to general convo. So we're gonna, like kind of engagement, I guess you can call it. We're just gonna, yeah, there we go. Which is just gonna be present in the Discord, interact with people, talk to them. So that's how they can interact with us being fair. So that's kind of a side note. All of you, I'm really gonna push you to use the Discord actively. And I'll just to clear one thing up, right? I don't mean by saying, oh, I want you to use Discord actively. That doesn't mean you have to talk about purely finance. You can talk about stuff around fair. You can maybe, do a little bit of the education. You can have discussions with people. You can go into off topic and discuss some other interests. But it's about having more activity on the Discord, and also kind of a big part of building that connection between, the community and fair, and also kind of building that community to be kind of tied together would be those interactions between us, so they kind of better understand exactly, what we're doing, what's going on. So the activity of Discord from all of you, or all of us, plus also, as we kind of bring in more of the community, is going to be super, super important. So you're going to hear this from me a million times, and I'm going to kind of bother you about it until everyone starts doing it, because this is super important. Generally, just to kind of have happening. And mainly you can focus on general engagement in conversations, have discussions, talk about stuff. It can be fair, it can be not, fair in the internal public side. In the internal one, you can use that. That's great. We can continue using what we already do for, but it's mainly about the public facing side. So the educational and the internal facing public. So it's basically about fair, what's going on, that kind of transparency side. Engage in either of those regularly, just to kind of help that activity up and help spark those early discussions before we have, I don't know, 50,000 people in there, which would then be, crazy, massive, super high activity. So really just wanted to reiterate, I am going to kind of push that quite a bit. Now, of course, cross interaction, that can be, like set discussions. So it could be that in educational sessions, we're going to be like, hey, by the end of this, discuss this. We can set that off, or we can kind of set up discussions like, oh, this is something that's happening. What do you guys think? Having, those are kind of more controlled, and then organic, right? There's not much we can do. We can't really control other people too much when they're just talking to each other. So there's either organic, or if we at least help set the topic. We can't just be like, no, you have to say this next and this next, right? Like we don't have that much control. So there's only really two options here. And as far as the bot, which is kind of mentioned, we can have some progression interaction, right? So progression, as far as their, the educational sessions, as far as some of the interactions, potentially like it can help track, like do the standard activity stuff on Discord. That can be, something that maybe, if you're active enough, you get access to the closed beta of the platform early, or not early, it's a closed beta. So you get access, or maybe you get early access to the open beta, or however more structured or extra things as people kind of level up and go through those activity wise, so they have some sense of progression as they're using it. And ideally, it would be good to have some kind of a bot, I'm gonna call it a game, but essentially something tied together the stock. So maybe pick the stock that'll perform the best, stuff like this. So that interaction is kind of somewhat more driven by bots, just to simplify kind of parts of those work, and still drive that attachment, have some interaction between people. Like, oh no, I think this stock will be, and I'm putting some whatever on it. Like having some kind of games or gamified interaction stuff within there would be very helpful. So these are the three kind of communication avenues. Now, as far as how to think about the community itself, right? Because I keep mentioning community, but where does this fit in? Where I would say, like, generally, Discord for us is kind of a third layer, and I'm going to explain what I mean by third layer, right? So if you think of a funnel, right, like at the top, you have people that just kind of, they saw something, they just kind of, for us, I would say like the first layer. So the first layer is basically Instagram, right? Instagram, Facebook, that kind of stuff. But I'm just going to use Instagram as an example, etc. I guess I could put here. So those are the very kind of low friction to follow, like kind of, easy interactions, but it's not, some super high engagement type user necessarily, just because they are. Now the second layer, that's someone that's a little bit more interested. So I would kind of put, Twitter, if, the kind of Twitter engagement that gets followed. And I don't mean like a normal random follower on Twitter, but I mean, because of our content on Twitter being a little bit more about fair, a little bit more about us, the education, kind of the content type that we're putting out through that platform would make Twitter or potentially parts of LinkedIn. And I'm kind of split on writing and LinkedIn or not, so I'm just gonna give it Twitter. But those are, in places where interaction is much more common, right? You on Instagram, most people just like and they scroll past. On Twitter, having that interaction, like sending that reply or doing a retweet, is a lot kind of higher conversion, because when you are on Instagram, if you like something, that doesn't mean it's going to show it to all your friends. But on Twitter, if you retweet it, it's kind of a bigger commitment. So it is kind of that they're more, I guess, committed, more interested in what we're doing. So we're kind of putting that as the second layer. And the third layer, that would be the Discord. So that's like kind of people that are going through the education, people that are really interested in what we're doing. It's the kind of the most kind of committed part of this kind of change I described. So, for example, kind of podcast listeners are typically kind of somewhere around this, a little bit above, so that we can second to third merge, because apparently all the data seems to show that if podcast listeners are super kind of committed comparatively to I don't know, someone that watches a live stream or the YouTube video. So it's really cool how the stats lay out. But that kind of positions where the where Discord is, and what does that kind of mean for us, right? So typically, the role Discord would play for them is, it is kind of a place, it's the main role for them, like early on, like, why are you joining, right? Because they can follow our updates about Fair through other places, or they can see the little posts on there through Instagram. But the big thing is, I think, it's going to be for them to engage, like the big, why would they join? They're joining to engage with education, right? So to take part, to have interactions during live streams, like more interactions, right? Like if someone leaves a comment on YouTube, or whatever you call them, the live stream comment, I guess. We will kind of read it, but they get to interact a lot more. For example, their stages. So if there's a lot of stuff, they get to come up and actually ask a question directly. Stuff like this. It can be, it's a lot more of an engaged process for them. So they could be either because they're currently learning. Currently learning, which can mean that they're going through some of the sessions, which I mentioned earlier. It could be that they're kind of the fans of the platform, so they're interested in what we're doing with the platform. They maybe want to access the platform, that they want to access the closed beta or something like that. And of course, long term, that means I'm kind of talking about right now timing, and and actually, let me just put explicitly joining beta. Because they're super interested, and all kind of a whole bunch of that. Right? You can see that all of this is far higher interaction than those other parts. And as kind of a, it would also kind of give them a place to discuss finance with the beginners, place to discuss finance with other beginners, with whatever. I'm just gonna leave it like that. Other beginners, and then of course, having someone there who can help them, guide them through it, find out the structure, give them some kind of a set of things to follow, have people who can answer questions which are a bit more complex, and have that support system. Now, of course, there are plenty other Discord servers for beginners to discuss finance, but us having that education is kind of what really ties it in. And then that's kind of an extra benefit. And maybe they might invite their friends in because they want to discuss it with them as well through that Discord place. But then they also end up engaging with their education and all those other areas. So that all kind of end up, blending together quite nicely. But that's it for, Discord part 1. I'm going to go over the next section. I'm going to go over the actual activity. So, basically, what are we going to actually do? And in the third one, I'm going to go a little bit more over the details. The third one's going to be quite short, of the actual funnel, which is basically a question of how the fuck are we getting people in? So anyway, that's the end of part 1. So thank you very much, and see you in the next one. Bye.